Hi, my name is Jenn Reid, and I'm the project-based learning coach at the Dayton Regional STEM School.
My name's Nichole Miller. I teach 8th grade language arts at the Dayton Regional STEM School.
And Nicole's with us today to talk a little bit about a project that she uses at the end of the year with her 8th graders that she has been able to use during our distance learning. And so I wanted to ask her a little bit about how that has worked and what made her continue the project even though we were in distance learning. So take it away, Nichole. Tell us a little bit about the project itself and how it's been going.
So I have done this project. This is my second year teaching 8th grade. And I did this project at the end of 8th grade last year. It is the 6-word memoir challenge. And it was one of my students' favorite projects last year. They created a 6-word memoir about themselves, and then they put it on a 4x5 art board in Adobe Illustrator. Once they created their background, they submitted it, and I put it together in a big banner that we hung up in our school building. The banner hung up all year, and all year long, the current 9th grade class would come back and point out their memoirs, and people coming in the building would see them and visit them. And it was just something that they were really proud of. And then ideally, these banners were they'll hang up for their 9th grade years, and then we'll hold on to them until graduation and have them hanging at graduation again. So when we found out that we were doing online for the remainder of the school year, it was challenging. I feel so bad for all of the fun stuff that we do that our 8th graders are missing out on this year. And this is one of those things that I didn't want them to miss out on. And so it was it was important enough to me to figure out how can I make this a fully digital project. It was kind of benefited by the fact that they were doing digital artwork already in the project. So translating it to being fully online, it was more of how was I introducing things and making it work better for them. To start the project, and this is kind of how I would have started at school anyway, we did a PowerPoint just talking about 6-word memoirs. And I showed them just some basic 6-word memoirs, where the idea of 6-word memoirs came from, and had them do a brainstorming sheet that they then submitted to me online. The next day, we came together and I showed them this PowerPoint for kind of the next steps. So we looked at what the goal of the design project was, to just share who they are in only 6 words, kind of telling their life story, but only using 6 words to do it, plus some type of background image that they had to use Adobe Illustrator for. All of the students were limited to that 4-inch by 5-inch landscape file, so that way when I put them in a banner, they're all cohesive and they work well together. So we went over the requirements, and each requirement is a criterion on their final rubric. I showed them some of the examples from last year's students to show kind of the different options for doing their backgrounds. They could do something simple, they could do geometric shapes, they could do a picture. I have students who are really obviously talented in digital art, so they used Wacom tablets and all kinds of stuff. And then I gave them a breakdown of day-to-day what my expectations were and what their goals were to accomplish for that day. So our first work day was Tuesday, April 21st. They had to read through the feedback that they received on their brainstorm sheet from me. They needed to decide which memoir they wanted to use, finalize the wording of that memoir, and then submit that to a form. So when they submitted to this form, I got their 6-word memoir, I got ideas for what background they were planning to use, and then they had an opportunity to ask me questions. So while they were submitting this throughout the day, I could go through and double check to make sure that their 6-word memoirs were meeting the basic requirements of 6 words and appropriate spelling and punctuation. And then if they had questions, I was able to email them with the response to that question. So this was just a really quick and easy way for me to do a virtual check-in with the students without necessarily having to meet everybody in a conference room or set up a specific time to do it. So then Thursday, April 23rd, and their goal was to get their artboard set up, which I did a screencast of exactly how to set up where each of those buttons were in Adobe Illustrator, which is what I would have done in class anyway, and had them submit a screenshot of their artboard setup to Schoology, again, so I could just glance through everything and make sure the settings were correct. And then they were to work on their background. Then the final work day was Tuesday, April 28th, where they had to complete their background, make sure everything was finalized, and then save their file as a .eps file. Again, this is something that in class I would have walked through step by step. So I did a screencast of an example of mine just to show them, here's where you go for save as, here's where you select EPS, and then they just had to submit that by 10 p.m. So here are some examples of the final products. I love the color choices.
Oh my gosh, it's gorgeous.
This image, I opened it and I was just super happy. This student chose to craft by hand, and then she scanned in her image. So leave me alone, but please stay. I love this image of this girl sitting on the cliff here, and then someone just standing behind her quietly. Basketball has become my quiet place. He chose to use kind of the shapes that are offered in Adobe Illustrator, but it's still a gorgeous memoir that tells me a lot about the student and what he values. We have Life is Crowded and I'm Antisocial. I feel this one a lot. Obviously, another really talented artist. She used the Wacom tablet to create this design. And then the final example I have for you, Swimming Isn't Racing, It's My Life. And this was a picture of him swimming in one of his competitions. So I love that the kids share their interests, they show their passion, and they really do tell a lot about a student with just 6 words.
So what advice do you have for teachers who might be either hesitant to do something like this in distant learning, or be thinking about projects that they have done with students in person before, and whether it's a good idea to try them in distance learning?
So I think what it comes down to is you have to figure out what you value the most for the project or for whatever the activity is that you're doing. With this project, if we had been in the school building, students would have gotten 5 or 6 rounds of feedback. They would have gotten peer critique 2 times. They would have brainstormed a lot more than just the 6-word memoirs than the 6-word memoirs that they did. And I kind of boiled it down to what were the most important things. For me, it was this end product that they get to value later on. I kind of went through my list of what can I get rid of? What can I shrink down? What can I scale down? I scaled down from the 6 rounds of feedback that students would normally get to they got 3 rounds of feedback on this. So the first time they turned in their brainstorm and I highlighted my top 2 that I thought were the best. Then they submitted to that form. And really the only feedback they got on that is if there was an issue. I emailed them about it. And then they submitted their final document yesterday, but I'm going through them, and if there are issues, I'll email them again and they'll get a chance to resubmit on Thursday for a revision. So I think when you're looking at something that seems really intimidating like this online teaching, kind of break it down to the basics. What's the minimum that you want, and then kind of build out from there.
Thank you. I feel like that's really valuable advice for all of us teachers right now, to be really thinking about what's the most important, what's the priority. And it sounds like you were able to do that, and already be receiving some really genuine work from the kids that will be able to be compiled into that big final product banner. So can't wait to see it, Nichole. Thank you so much for sharing with us.
Of course.